Hey there friends, in this video we're going to be looking at the trade idea for the week as well as talk about some of the activity in the stock market we've been seeing. So as you guys know, and if you've been following the market, the Nasdaq has officially entered correction territory with it falling more than 10% since its February 12th peak, and this has placed a lot of tech stocks particularly in an oversold zone. So you can see compared to the S&P, the Russell, and the Dow Jones, Nasdaq composite is actually falling pretty hard, and tech in general has fallen pretty hard. So with that being said, I wanted to share with you guys what might be a good idea to trade in the options market for this week based on some of this volatility. And the idea really revolves around Qualcomm, and this is based on the recommendation of Market Rebellion. So on their site they talk about Qualcomm potentially breaking past its 200-day moving average, and you can see from the chart here this blue line representing the moving average probably around that 123 range. So depending on the conditions in the market, if there is news that pushes the tech sector and some of the Nasdaq group further down, then Qualcomm will likely follow the Nasdaq composite and will continue to go down. However, if there's some news that pushes prices up in tech or something that causes a rebound, then the stock could potentially use this 200-day moving average as support and retrace some of the downside that it has followed. So it could potentially retrace that same trajectory on the upside. And so I think that's why they're recommending it for this week, because it's getting to that key indicator of the 200-day moving average. They also point out that based on the RSI, which is typically a good indicator of whether or not a stock is overbought or oversold, meaning people are selling it too much or there are too many sellers, or overbought in that there are too many buyers. So in this case, they're saying in the short-term basis, the stock appears to be oversold, and that's kind of consistent in the entire semiconductor space, which is sort of the space that they're in, telecommunications and semiconductors. So they're expecting a movement based on this 200-day simple moving average. So it could either retest the 121 support levels, which would place it back here where we were at last week, I believe, and there's a good chance that could be reached because it looks like there's somewhat of a gap just to get back to here. So depending on the news, it could breach that 200-day moving average and come back down to that previous low of 121. However, if it does not breach that, then as I mentioned, could retrace that step back up. So they're really just kind of hoping that there is a strong action based on this 200-day moving average level. Now, when we look at the sentiment around Qualcomm, it doesn't appear to be that clear of what exactly investors think of it right now based on the call to put ratio. There are 55% call options out of all the option contracts versus 44% being put options. So that's pretty split and doesn't really paint a picture of which direction investors are thinking the stock could go. And when we look at the news, it doesn't appear that there's anything really that stands out besides the company just coming off of its Q1 earnings. And looking at this article from the Motley Fool, they just recommending that potentially this downside might be maybe an invitation to buy a few Qualcomm shares, which maybe doesn't sound like a bad idea because they're a good 5G play, Internet of Things, which is the big promise that 5G is hoping to bring. So that could potentially help the stock if it does rebound. But when we look at what positions investors could be taking, we want to look at the option chain. And when we look at the option chain for this week in particular, which is the week that Market Rebellion is recommending, then we see that on the call side there is a somewhat unusual higher ratio of volume against open interest, meaning more volume coming in than there is existing open interest. You can see that around this 128, which isn't super out of the money, but it's kind of out of the money based on where we're trading now. So when we compare that to the put side, it's not as strong as the call side, so potentially could be suggesting movement to the upside, but that all depends on some of the news that continues to develop here with this correction going on. And so the idea really in summary would be either getting the call options or the put options depending on certain news or conditions of whatever's going on. You guys definitely want to practice managing this and seeing where the market is at, especially the Nasdaq, because this will likely follow the Nasdaq. So market rebellion here is suggesting a good entry point to be or to watch is with the stock coming back up that 200 simple moving average. So if the stock is above 123 in an up market, then that could potentially be a good indicator that the stock will continue to go up, and the levels we'll see on the upside are as follows here based on the indicators that market rebellion itself has noted here. So we could see some really good upside, essentially retracing back some of the path it set forth. And on the put side, good the same entry level would apply here with the 200 simple moving average of 123, but in this case would be getting the, I apologize, this should be the March 12th, but in this case would be getting the March 12th 217 put, which would be slightly out of the money, I believe, puts, or no, I think actually more in the money. So in the money puts, and the target levels here would be as follows, with us getting back to that previous support level hit. So that essentially is the trade idea based on some of this market volatility, and I think it's not a bad idea since we've been seeing a lot of the sell-off concentrate on tech as more investors are shifting from tech to more value plays, so that growth versus value mindset is, and shift in mindset, I guess, is what's taking place. So this might be a good idea for the week, and definitely want to keep an eye out. But let me know if you guys know anything in particular about why Qualcomm might be moving, or if investors are expecting anything in particular. But based on the news, nothing seems to have stood out. But anyways, that's the idea. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.